Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Unleashing a Woman's Full Potential. I'm Rose Collorossi, your host. So excited to introduce Jenn Taylor. She is mom of 18, host of At a Crossroads with the Naked Podcaster, is a transformational coach for Christian women and a motivational speaker. She's an NLP practitioner and has 15 years in the foster care sector as both a parent and a trainer, has written the blog Moms Running It for over 9.5 years, and is a published author of a self-help memoir, Hello, My Name is Warrior Princess. She is also married to an amazing man in Reno, Nevada, is a runner, minimalist, and healthy lifestyle enthusiast. Find her at momof18.com. So the first question I'm sure everyone out there is asking themselves is, how are you a mom of 18 and when do you ever sleep?
I'm big on using a calendar, which may come up in our talk. So as far as sleeping, I use a calendar for everything. I also think it's really important to recognize, I know I'm a morning person. I can be up at 4:30 and ready to go, and I get more done in the first 3 hours of the day than I probably do the whole rest of the day, right? And that means that I'm not a night person. So my kids knew that somewhere between 8 and 9, I was on ER duty. And I made that really clear because I think boundaries are important, and embracing who you are is important. I have kids that are night people and kids that are morning people. And they just knew that once I went to bed, as long as they were quiet and didn't disturb anyone that was trying to sleep, and they were able to get up and go to school, I really don't care what time they go to bed. They just need to be quiet and respectful at night.
Nice.
And they knew that my boundary was, if you have a nightmare, you're not feeling well, if there's anything going on that's worth waking me up for, wake me up. You're never going to get in trouble because my phone still, most of my kids are adults, and still, you have your favorites list. So I have all my favorites, all my kids, all my son-in-laws. And although my phone is off, it's on do not disturb, those favorites will ring through. And my kids know if my phone rings, I know that it's important and I want to be interrupted. If it's not important enough to wake me up for, save it for the morning. And I just set boundaries. So I actually get great sleep, and I've always gotten great sleep. Breastfeeding kids and being pregnant and having toddlers, that was a different sort of life.
Mm-hmm.
At that point where your expectation to get sleep is different and we're all completely sleep deprived. But as soon as my kids were able to kind of sleep on their own, they knew, don't wake me up unless it's an emergency. You better be bleeding out of a major artery to wake me up, because my sleep was important. So I always got sleep. As far as 18 kids, do you want I can take a deep breath and give you the story?
Sure. We would love to hear it.
I knew at 15 I would probably go through infertility, which is real odd. It was the month before my 16th birthday. I don't know what that doctor saw, but I'm super grateful that he mentioned to me that I would probably go through infertility. It was one of those drops,
Wow.
those drops that happen in your life that kind of you put on the back burner, but later on in life, you're grateful that you knew that. It was kind of preparing me. I did go through infertility. I went through almost a year, 7 surgeries. They're the day surgeries, the what's going on with your body surgeries. I was also maxed out on Clomid and Provera. So for anyone who's gone through infertility, that will make complete and total sense. Once I hit the point that IVF was the next step, I waved the white flag. For mamas who go through that, I like big, massive virtual hugs. It was not my journey. I was weaning off all the medication. I had this short little Asian infertility specialist who was super quiet and shy and just a lovely human being. So a second really good experience was a male doctor, OBGYN. He came into the room one day doing the blood work and hugged me, excuse me, which was super odd. And he said, "This is your miracle from God. You're pregnant. You're pregnant off of our schedule. Expect to have a tough pregnancy, and this may never happen again." I did have a tough pregnancy, and that daughter was born with a lung disease. I wasn't able to hold her. They rushed her right off. 7 hours later, the head of the NICU came into me and said, "If we had known how critical your daughter is, we would have handed her back to you. they told me that that was a possibility when I was in labor. We knew something was off. We weren't sure what it was. So the doctor said, we hit the hot button. There'll be a whole bunch of people in your room. There were 23 people in my room. I remember pushing and then looking up and being like, holy cow, there's enough, like get the bleachers out, right?
Wow.
Stadium seating. They did a bedside evaluation and they whisked her away. So I was prepared that if they handed her back to me, that meant they were giving me the opportunity to allow my daughter to die in my arms. And if they whisked her off, they were saving her life. So they whisked her off in 7 hours. I heard nothing. And then the doctor came in and said, had we known how sick she was, because we'd put her on one thing to save her life and something else would fail. She was the most critical baby out of 29 in the NICU, even though she was 37 weeks gestation. And that entire infertility birth story of mine made me realize I was done trying to do things to get pregnant, that if it happened on its own, that would be fine. Otherwise, I wasn't interested. I did get pregnant a total of 7 times, which I know it completely contradicts infertility. Some things are not in the book. I gave birth 4 times total. I miscarried 3. My 7th pregnancy and miscarriage was twins at 19 weeks. And that resulted in 3 surgeries, a DNC, a hysterectomy, and then a life-saving surgery because I had internal bleeding from the hysterectomy.
Jen.
I had 5 blood transfusions. I was open hip to hip. I was dead on the table, so I'm told. So that's my biology story. When I went through infertility and I had my first daughter and I decided, she's 29 right now, by the way, for all of you wondering, she's 29 and she's amazing. I realized I really wanted a family and it was important to me, but it didn't have to look traditional. My 3rd grade teacher made an enormous impact in my life. And from her example, I knew that you can make an exponential difference in the life of a child in passing. And I was blessed 21 years ago. I flew back to Rhode Island where I was raised, found her in her 3rd grade classroom, still teaching. And I was able to thank her personally. I spent years speaking and telling the story about what a difference she made. And she's in the book. The book is about my life growing up in dysfunction, but she's the one that really needed to know. And she was the only one that didn't know. And it's not often we get to go back and thank people.
Yes.
So from her, I knew since I was a child that should have been in foster care, I really wanted to do foster care. So after Bree was born, I became a foster parent. I did 4 adoptions and I had 2 kids long-term. One who ended up aging out pretty much. She was 17. And then I was divorced. So if you're keeping track, that's 4 biological, 4 adopted, and 2 long-term. That's 10. We're at 10 right now.
Wow.
And I was divorced. After that divorce, I continued to do foster care. I adopted 1 more and I took 3 more long-term. So that's 14. And I loved it and I was happy. And I did have a relationship in that time period also that ended. And at that point, my daughter, who at the time, my oldest daughter, who was about 20, said, your picker's off. You pick good men who aren't good for you. A friend of ours and my daughter decided to start fixing me up on dates, which was retrospectively super fun. Dane is one of the people that they fixed me up with. He was the first person that responded to them, not the first date I went on, but the first person who responded. And I was honestly humoring them. I was really not interested. So I showed up for our date like, hi, it's nice to meet you. Great body language. We had texted the week before we met and we had 1 phone call and I pretty much did everything I could to deter him from even wanting to date me. Like I've got 14 kids and, I'm single and I'm
14 kids.
Like who wants to date someone with 14 kids? Like that should be like immediately we're done. He was like, I've always wanted to do foster care and have a big family. And I was like, yeah, there's something wrong with people like you. So from the moment we met, we have been together. He is, I give my bio and you said she's married to an amazing man in Reno, Nevada. It makes me smile every time. We've been together from that moment. Dane had 4 children and his wife died. So I had 9 at home at the time. Bree was one of them and she was kind of moving out when we met. And so we got together and had 12 kids living at home. for years actually. And the most I've ever had, which is one of the next questions I get, the most I've ever had at one time out of those 18 is 12. 11, I've had 11 and 12 for years off and on through this period of time. But never more than 12. And I have one picture with 14 kids in it, and I use it everywhere. I think it's this December, it will be 6 years old. In 2021, Christmas 2021, it will be 6 years old. I will never stop using this picture for two reasons. One, I've never gotten 14 kids together at one time before or after that. And I have a son in that picture who has died. And so he will never be in a picture again. It's just part of my story. And we have parts of our stories that are really tough and parts that are really beautiful. Yeah. And they just create who we are. So that was kind of the long answer to how I got 18 kids, but it's an amalgam. And Dana never had like I had a hysterectomy at 33. I don't have biological children with him, but you never know. If one question I get asked a lot is, which ones are yours? I understand people want to figure things out, right? The spreadsheet. They want to put you in a box. And I know that that's a biology question, which for? And I'm just always like, I used to ask my kids when we had a lot at home and we would go on a hayride, for example, and we have 13 kids on this hayride, and people are like, oh my gosh, are they all yours? I'm like, well, it's not all of them, but or which ones are yours? And I would just ask the kids, hey, which ones of you are mine? And they'd all raise their hand, because that's hurtful for the kids. Although I understand where some of the questions come from and why they're being asked. It's my job to protect my kids from the pain of the outside world that I can. And those are questions that were easy to deter. So yes, they're all mine. And if I lined up all 18 and you looked at Dane and you looked at me, and I said, which are his for biological, which are my for biological, I can 100% guarantee you would choose incorrectly. So
I think you bring up a really good point, because I'm a stepmother of two. Mm-hmm. And I always say I fell in love with the kids before I fell in love with my husband. So then we went on to have two. And when we've been out, people will say, because my husband's 9 years older than me, they'll be like, well, whose are yours? And my stepdaughter actually looks more like me than she does her father or her mother. It's hilarious. And in the beginning, it was like, I felt this need to explain all the time. But when you're a family and you have so much love to give, and perhaps your background was one where you didn't feel that love, so you want to make sure that they feel that love, you go above and beyond. And so my kids are my kids. And so no matter where we go, people would say, oh, are they all yours? Yeah, they're all mine. Now, that's not discounting their mother, but they are mine. I take care of them. I fed them, washed them, cleaned them, drove them, whatever. But more importantly, I love them. They're part of my family. They're mine. They're my kids. So I get what you're saying. I think a lot of times when someone has not been a step parent or haven't adopted or haven't fostered, they don't really understand that. They go right into, like you said, the biology, like, which ones are yours? And it is our job to protect the kids, because after a while, my oldest son was like, Mom, you don't have to say stepmom or stepson anymore. In fact, I don't like that. And I said, well, I was just trying to be respectful. He was very young. I said, I'm just trying to be respectful. And he said, no, I have two moms. Yeah, I have my biological mom, but I have you. Mm-hmm. So we do have to protect our children first and foremost. So how did you not lose yourself? So you talked a little bit about this in terms of healthy boundaries, one of my favorite topics. Speak to the audience who may not have 12 or 18 kids, but let me tell you, even with one child or two children, it's hard sometimes to lose yourself. And very often women will put themselves last.
Oh, very often. That was super important to me. I think it came with a different set of internal compass or values because I grew up in so much dysfunction. And when you're a child who doesn't feel worth it, you really want your kids. I mean, even without that. And A parent means you have at least one child. We're all parents. I don't win any awards for having more. I've had more opportunity to fail forward. I've had more years. I've had 29 plus years of parenting with 18 human beings, plus some that have come and gone that aren't included in that. And I mean, I've just had more chance to fail and learn, right? Losing myself was super important not to allow that to happen. So I actually have a free quiz that I offer, and I designed this for another company and then asked to use it because this is so common. It's so common. And what it basically does is goes back to like, who was important in your life growing up? What things did you love? What values or organizations are important to you, like rescuing animals, for example, or helping people after a natural disaster? Okay, we have these internal things that we value. And what are those? And when you list those out and really consider them and think about them, you can determine where you're putting your energy. We all have 24 hours. We all need to sleep. We all have, we all have the same amount of time and roughly energy in our day. So where do you want to put that? My kids were the most important thing to me. However, it was also important that I didn't lose my identity so much that I got lost in it. So I maintained those things that were important to me. I'm a runner. So that's a great example. Okay. I wanted to be physically fit to keep up with my kids. I wanted to remain healthy. I wanted to be a good example to them. So I was actually doing it in large part because I was a parent, but it was also my thing, my time to decompress. So that looked different over the years. I pushed a stroller for part of the time off and on. I switched to biking because they were too heavy to push, but I could hold them on my bike. It meant that I get up at 5 in the morning to go running and run before they wake up because it's a priority to me. So again, using your calendar and determining if you're a night person or a morning person and kind of honoring that. But I still run at 5 o'clock in the morning. Years and years and years and years later, I still do that because that's when it's easiest for me to carve out that time and make sure that it gets done. And I put it on the calendar. I know I run with my group every Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday. I know what time and I know where we meet. There is zero reason for me to put it on my calendar, except that it reminds me that I'm a priority and it holds me accountable. And just seeing for 15 years that I'm a priority and that's when I go running is a reminder to put yourself first. The oxygen mask before anyone else, fill up your cup before you pour it out. We have all these analogies that we completely ignore, and self-care is overused. It's more determining what is important to you and maintaining that. I have all but one child moved out of my house now. I have zero empty nest syndrome, and that's because I'm still me and I'm still their mom, but I've balanced that out, right? So what's important to you and where can you put it? And remember, putting that on your calendar and honoring yourself is a great example for your kids on how to do things as they grow up. It's also a great boundary to set, like you said. I'm a mom 24/7. I'm running for an hour. You're good.
Yeah.
You're good.
To me, there's so many things that we see, right? So women will get lost, right? They'll put their kids first, they'll put their husband first, cleaning the house first, doing the business first, and then what's left for them. And so there's this guilt of, well, I don't want to take time for me, or I don't want to spend money on me. And I often say, well, listen here, like, how are you going to show up as your best self if you're exhausted or you're not healthy, like you said, or you're not physically fit? You can't run around after the kids. But more importantly, which is a point that you just made, is how about model the behavior that you want for your children? And so often, and this was the case for me years ago, I had someone who said to me, would you want that for your daughters? And I said, no, absolutely not. Then why is it okay for you? And that landed right between my eyeballs. And as I sat in it, right? So we need to sit in this stuff sometimes. I went, wait a minute. I really do need to take a step back these littles are watching everything I'm doing. They're listening to everything I'm doing. And I'm thinking I'm modeling, everything that I should and putting them in what they need to go. And I'm giving them healthy meal. And I was, and they were the most important thing in running my business and having that guilt of, am I balancing? But what I wasn't doing was showing them that I was worthy of some downtime, of doing things that were important to me. And then what was that going to do for them as they grew up? So that's a really, really important point. The other point that I really want to highlight, you have so many nuggets of gold here, is putting it in your calendar.
Mhm.
It doesn't matter that it's up here, but once it's in your calendar, it's so much easier when somebody wants to utilize that time of yours, right? When it's up here, you can go, oh, okay, yeah, let's get together for lunch, or yeah, let's get together for coffee, or yes, I can help at school. But when it's in your calendar, it's so much easy to say, well, you know what? I have something from 9 to 11, but I could meet you at 12. So much easier. So great nuggets of gold, I have to say. Fantastic. All right. I want to talk about mindset, because you have an amazing mindset, right? Right away, you went into, I'm no better. I don't need a medal because I've had more kids. Certainly, I think you do. I have 4, and I don't. Seriously, you're a phenomenon, and I think you're an amazing human being, because I think I have always wanted to foster children, and it doesn't mean that I won't eventually, but I just think it's needed. And I don't think people realize how strained the system is in needing foster parents. So thank you for what you're doing. It's just absolutely amazing. But I want to talk about mindset, negative thinking. So often as moms, we're having this self-doubt. Am I a good enough mom? Or maybe we own a business, or we're writing a blog, we're doing something. And then, oh my gosh, am I giving my husband enough attention? And, am I good enough? All of these self-sabotaging beliefs, causing this negative thinking start jumping in. Let's talk about that a little bit. And, I'm sure there had to be at some point where you were like, okay, what am I doing? I mean, I know I did, when the kids were running around and fighting, and one was doing one thing and one set fire out on the deck. And I'm like, oh my God, have I just lost control? And they have just taken over? Like, what's going on with me?
What's really interesting about that? We have we have traditions. I loved implementing traditions. It was really important to me. And one of them is we don't get together for Thanksgiving or for Christmas. We have a holiday brunch in the middle. And that way, if kids want to be with us for Thanksgiving or for Christmas, they can, but they don't feel, like they need to be at 3 different places on Thanksgiving Day and stressed out. So we
Jen,
have,
can I just stop you there for a minute?
yeah,
That is brilliant.
yeah,
No,
it is.
brilliant. So
Yeah,
any of the moms out there that are
yeah,
not yet there with older children that have remarried, and you're dealing with the, what parent am I going to? Or maybe
yep.
they just want to stay home and start their own tradition. As much as we want them, we don't want them to have that pressure. Okay, I think I'm going to start implementing that, Jen. That is such a great idea.
It's one of my favorite things that we did. And actually, Brie, again, because she's the oldest biological, so she's kind of like, she got the brunt of everything, right? She's the guinea pig. I was like, I'm sorry and you're welcome. I don't know, like, you were the first one. She has been in a relationship with the same person for almost 10 years now. She's 29. They met when she was 19. And not only do I have an ex-husband, so there's 2 households, right?
Right.
And we used to alternate, in our court, blah, 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 we alternated, which worked great for us. That went really well. And when his mom was sick, we'd swap it around and stuff, like, no big deal.
Right.
When the kids got older, they didn't want to feel like, first of all, it's not a popularity contest. I don't need to be chosen to come to my house. I want to reduce stress at all costs. So they had that. And then when Bree started dating her now fiance, Thanksgiving was very, very, very important tradition for he and his dad. And there is no way in the world I am going to compete or create stress over his tradition with his dad.
Wonderful.
So I am very upfront, and she's like, Mom, it's really important. And so I'm trying to figure out times. And I was like, yeah, instead of figuring out times, why don't we just figure out a different way to do this? So
Beautiful.
she and I came up with the holiday uh, brunch, because brunch is my kid's favorite thing that we ever did on the weekends, and we did it regularly. So, and it went from my house to now Bree's house, because she's got a bigger house than I do, and it's a very neutral territory. And we just do this holiday right in between Christmas and Thanksgiving. So we always send out a text to all of our kids, like, these are the plans for Thanksgiving, these are the plans for Christmas, let me know if you're showing up, and this is the holiday brunch, which they're expected at. And it's just right in the middle. It's on a Saturday at like 10, and everybody potlucks it, and we do this massive brunch. So I have loved it. First of all, as far as mindset, that's a great place to start. So anytime in your family or in your business or in your situation, you feel stress, conflict, or being pulled in different directions, stop. I'm a huge proponent for writing things down. I think it's super important in how our brain processes things. I talk to process, I'm extroverted. Some people think, but I still think regardless, writing it down. What about that is stressful? So we wrote down Thanksgiving. What about that was stressful? And realized that Christmas was starting to be the same way. Do I show up on Christmas Eve? Do I do Christmas morning? I just say, this is what we're doing for Christmas at my house. If you want to join in on any of it, feel free. Period.
Love it.
There's no guilt. There's no stress.
Love it.
The stress in my kid's life is not going to come from me any more than I can handle it. So when you're feeling stress, and I know this is an example with kids, it can be with work, it can be with your spouse, it could be with extended family, anything. Anytime you feel that, like, oh my gosh, this is coming up, just stop and write it down. There is always a solution if you're willing to look out of the box. So what is plan B? Plan B in this situation was holiday brunch, end of story. And I honestly don't care if my kids show up for my Thanksgiving or someone else's, or they go out to eat, or they stay home in their pajamas. That's not about me. And I'm not taking on their stress. I am giving a solution, end of story. I'm going to give you another example. When I had lots of little kids at home and there were toddlers, here's something that you'll relate to with 4 kids, 1 kid. I want a drink of water. Here's your cup. An hour later, I want a drink of water. Where's your cup? I don't know. And I don't know if that one's mine, and I left it here and that's his, and I don't want to use it again. And I ended up with 5 bazillion dishwasher loads of cups every single day. And it drove me nuts, and it was stressful, right? Like, where is your freaking cup? Why can't you? I don't want to wash all the cups. My solution to that was color coding my kids. So you have to think, like, it can be something silly like that, or it seems silly. If it's creating stress in your life, stop and think, how can I have an out of the box way to look at it? So this is the first thing in mindset, is decreasing things that cause stress. I color coded my kids. Bree was purple, Olivia was yellow, Alana was orange, Nikki, you know what I mean? Taylor was blue.
Fantastic.
Right.
Fantastic. So find the solutions that are going to lessen the stress.
So then if I found a yellow cup and Nikki said, I want a drink, like, your yellow cup's right there, refill it. End of my cup saga. The next thing with mindset is, and this is, again, you have to be introspective. You have to recognize that these things are happening. And that's on you. That's on you. When stuff's stressful in the day, it's on you to recognize it and even write it down and think about it later. Because sometimes in the heat of the moment, we can't do any action. We can't stop and pause. When you say something that is considered an absolute, oh, I never, I always, that always happens, she always does that, we'll never be able to. When you hear yourself making absolute statements, I can't, I won't, she won't, it hasn't, stop yourself right there and ask yourself, when did I decide that? So this is something I do in coaching, because it's easier to recognize it in someone else's conversation.
Sure.
But it is totally possible to recognize when you are like, I can never get through the day without this happening. Brakes, put the brakes on. When did you decide that? Because at some point in our lives, we make decisions. I'll give you an example. I never test well, or
Me
I always have
neither.
a hard time taking tests, right? Like, when did I make that decision? Well, in second, third, fourth, like some grade, I took a test. I don't remember what, I don't remember what grade, but I know that there was a point in time that I took a test and the teacher said something like, you didn't do well on that test, or you something in that. I don't remember a specific event, but I know that in my elementary school years, there was a time, and I'm pretty sure it was in second or fourth grade, when I had a teacher that I really didn't hit it off with, that mentioned me not doing well on a test. And I made a decision then. I made a decision that I don't take tests well,
Mhm. Yeah.
that I just, and then that decision became a belief about myself. And when I was in college, my first year in history, I had a professor who said, so why are you struggling on the quiz? And I said, oh, I don't test well. Like, isn't that a great excuse to fail everything in life? Also, it becomes a decision that I've made about myself that's negative. So when did you decide that thing? When you say something more absolute, when did you make that decision? Because that decision became a belief in yourself, and that belief is a limiting belief. It's limiting you from doing well. And my professor in college says it has nothing to do with you taking tests well. It has you doing the same thing over and over again. So it's like you're walking into the tree, you're walking into the tree, you're walking into the tree.
Yes.
You just need to learn how to walk around it.
I love that. I love that. It's interesting. Something similar happened to me, and I had a psych professor say to me, you finish the test before everyone else, and then you go back and you change everything. He said, I've been watching you. And he said, and what I'm noticing is your first answers were correct. But because somewhere along the line, a teacher must have said to you, you can't finish the test that quickly. You must have everything wrong. You are now second guessing yourself. And I said, I don't know if I'm doing that. He said, you are, and I'm going to prove it on the next test that we have. And so we had it. I forgot that he even had this conversation with me, and I had the test, and he came over and grabbed the test off of my desk. And I said, well, wait a minute. I didn't have a chance to review it. And he said, yeah, I know. And I think I got like a 97 on the test.
Yeah.
And he said, somewhere along the line, someone said something to you and you started believing it. And that's what happens. You're absolutely right. We start making this story up and these beliefs about ourselves. So you make a really great point that, and I'm a big believer in this. When I say journaling, people just go, oh my gosh, I don't want to write. And I say, it's as simple as just a few lines of what I like to call a brain dump. And it lets you, it's almost like talking into a recorder and being able to go back and listen to it. When you start seeing the words that you're using that are in your head that you're listening to and you're starting to believe, it's right there on paper. And it's very easy to start seeing a pattern of how you are thinking and what you are believing. So that's a great point. Jenn, we could go on and on and on talking. You are a wealth of knowledge. You're amazing. I want to learn more about your journey. So I'm hoping that we're going to have you on another show, but I just want to thank you so much for being here. I know the audience has grabbed nuggets of gold the way that I have, and all of your information on how to contact Jenn. Jenn, what is your website again?
Momof18.com.
Beautiful. Go look up Jenn, look up her coaching, check out her book. You're fantastic. So thank you so much again for being on Unleashing a Woman's Full Potential.